Happy Friday to everybody, and welcome to the Qredible live broadcast. I am so excited to be here today and to introduce Kim Stuck, who is the CEO of Allay Consulting, which is a compliance consulting firm that helps companies with many types of compliances, but specializes in cGMP, which I'm told is current, right? GMP.
Yep.
And OSHA compliance. And all of you know my esteemed CEO and chairman of Qredible, Brian Fitzpatrick. So welcome both of you. We're excited to have this combo.
Yeah,
Great to
thanks.
be here.
All right.
Great to have you, Kim. Thanks for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Love it.
We're going to kick off today with really the topic around the industry impact of GMP certification. And, Kim, we're so thrilled that you're here because you are such a thought leader in this space and making real world impact, as far as helping companies attain this certification. So just for the sake of kind of level setting and making sure we're all on the same page with the topic today, can you kind of kick off by, defining GMP certification and specifically maybe in the CBD space and in the cannabis space, and if there are differences there, just kind of give us the big picture.
Yeah. So really the only difference between hemp and THC cannabis is which certifying bodies will work with you. The actual certification is the same. So people who think that they can't get it because they have THC cannabis, that is not true. That is like a huge myth in the industry that you can't get it. We've been able to get it for a few years now. Back when I first started, you couldn't because there were no certifying bodies that would work with you. So that's really the only difference. So GMP means good manufacturing practices. So it is something that has existed for over 100 years. These certifying bodies have been around for like 100 years. This is not something that's new. It's just new to the industry. And it means essentially it's a certification that you look at the processes that exist in your facilities and evaluate them to make sure that everything that you're making is as safe as it can possibly be, right? And if there is a problem with something, how do you react to that problem? What do you do if metal shards get into your edibles? Like, do you stop it before it goes out the door? Do you do a recall? All of these things. It's really just about risk mitigation and consumer protection. So, and quality assurance, right? You want to make sure that everybody's getting the same edible every single time, right? And making sure that your brand is really producing things that are the same every single time, right? Like that's what you want. That's why McDonald's does so well, because anywhere you go, you have the same thing. So, yeah.
This is such an important topic because a lot of people say, "Oh, I take CBD or I take cannabis," but they have no idea that it doesn't follow the same stringent formula as the food industry, right? So, they're safer buying a head of lettuce in many respects, than because of the lack of standards. So one of the things that's I think is going to start driving more focus on this is when we finally figure out what's going on with the Farm Bill, right? We haven't seen the 2023 Farm Bill, and we're all, waiting because it's essentially expired as of September 30th. Let's first kind of talk about the CBD side of things, and what do you expect to see happen as more guidance comes out and things, start heading in that direction? Or more importantly, what would your recommendation be for future proofing in that direction instead of waiting to be told what to do in creating, safe practices in manufacturing?
Yeah. So quality assurance and food safety are the same, right? And in all industries, right? So we can learn from other industries on what we need to do. We can look at the supplement industry, we can look at the food and food ingredients industry, and look at those FDA regulations and follow that until we get our own set of regulations. So right now, Congress is deciding on if they want the FDA to write a set of regulations. The FDA can't just write a set of regulations without Congress's approval. And Congress needs to tell them exactly what they want included in those regulations. And that's what's happening right now, because the FDA right now is looking at the already existing regulations, CFR 111 for supplements, CFR 117 for food and food ingredients, and then also 211 for pharmaceuticals. And they're saying that CBD doesn't really fall into any of these categories. So we need a new category that is for cannabinoids. And so Congress wants the FDA to write hopefully says that they want them to write those regulations.
Yeah, they sort of kicked it over to them at the beginning of the year. And what, if anything, do you think is going to happen with existing CBD products and companies? Do you think products are going to be pulled off the shelves? Will the agency continue to issue warning letters and that are making health related claims? What do you kind of predict is the future as Congress writes these guidelines and things happening? What's your prediction?
So I think it's going to be treated like any other industry, right? So that's kind of the point that they're trying to get to. The warning letters for claims and things like that's going to continue. That shouldn't be happening, but it is, unfortunately. And I think a lot of people just don't understand what a claim really is, and they're just trying to sell their products and all of that. But being mindful of that and your branding and marketing is really important. On top of that, how things are made is really important. So what we do, my company, Allay Consulting, does is everything that we offer to our clients is not a requirement yet. So all of our clients, every single one of them, is striving to be better, right? They're striving to prepare themselves for this future that we don't know.
Right.
And it is difficult. But if you are following an FDA guideline, if you are getting GMP certification from an accredited third party that has a cannabis specific GMP, or even you just go with supplements or food and food ingredients, you are already miles ahead of your competition.
Right.
And when Congress decides whatever they're going to do, and the FDA writes a set of regulations, because eventually this either has to be regulated or they're not going to allow it at all, which I don't think is going to happen. I think they're going to regulate it. And when that happens, I would say most of the industry is going to suffer very badly. Because I would say it was like 80% of companies out there right now have no quality assurance or GMPs in place at all.
But wait a minute, they say they do. They put stickers up on their website. And they put that GMP sticker up there. And what I'm finding is, they'll put that on there if they happen to be buying from a company that might be GMP certified. Maybe they're only buying 4 products and they're private labeling them, but they stick it up on the website to make it look like everything there is GMP because they're more of a merchant, not necessarily a manufacturer. That's been rampant in this industry.
It has. Yes, but that's starting to kind of stop because of these claims. That's considered a claim, right? Anything that's untruthful about the product essentially it can get a warning letter, can get a cease and desist, can get a fine. We've seen fines up to $75,000. That's something that is significant. We obviously, the other thing is, can you go on that website, find a link to their actual GMP certification through their accredited certifying body? That is how you really know.
Right.
Also, there are, you can go to accredited certifying bodies sites and, put in their search bar that company name. And if they're certified, it'll show up.
Right.
Yeah. So there's ways to know, but you're right. It is fairly annoying how much the GMP buzzword has gotten around. But I think that consumers are kind of starting to figure it out. Also, companies that buy from other companies, I have companies that buy their oil from other companies, and if they're not GMP, they don't use them, right? So that's starting to happen, which is exactly what happened in the wholesale food manufacturing world. You can't sell on Amazon, you can't sell in King Supers, you can't really buy or sell to other companies if you don't have GMP. That's kind of the industry standard in wholesale food. And that is sort of how it's going in the United States when it comes to cannabis. And there are states right now like New York and Florida that require GMP certification before you can even get a license. So
That just
That's
makes so much sense to me. And one of the things that we brought out is this Q verified sort of designation. So we're not only validating and verifying licenses, but we're validating. We're going to those sites that you talked about and
Mhm.
checking up. Do they actually have this GMP certification? So if it's got the Qredible seal, what we do is we take that certificate and we put it through the blockchain. We give it a smart contract ID, which means it's been validated and verified, because it's just amazing to me. Like, there were companies will just, they'll search the web and grab those things and say that they are, and it's very misleading to consumers. So I
Mhm.
see this going in the right direction. And so I think, sort of what I know you've been an advocate of, and I want to talk a little bit about that, because there's a lot of fear in the cannabis side specifically, like, oh boy, this is going to, go by way of the big pharma industry. And I mean, technically, I don't really see, that particularly happening. But as you said earlier, sort of like the rest of the wholesale food industry and those types of things, there will be regulations. But it's important. We may not have as rigid and expensive framework as the pharmaceutical side, but when cannabis gets rescheduled, with 280E going away, there's going to be money to invest in
Mhm.
compliance. There's going to be money to invest in safety. And I like to call it future proofing your manufacturing operations and getting out ahead of this. Like, why wouldn't you do this so you're prepared, as opposed to waiting for the adults to be in the room and tell you what to do? Like, it doesn't really make sense to me the other way.
Yeah, well, I mean, and all cannabis companies are struggling right now, whether you're in hemp or THC. I mean, it's rough out there. The economy is terrible. And yeah, things like 280E exist, and not being able, like in Colorado, you can't sell, certain cannabinoid products in Colorado. You have to sell them out of state. It's really, there's a lot of different rules and laws to abide by, that make it really difficult for companies to be profitable. But as you said, you have to future proof or you will not be around. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a catch 22, which is hard. But the people that are saying, okay, like we need to do something, at least get something in place, or at least get the ball rolling in that direction. We have a lot of clients that have a really low, like monthly, hourly budget. And that's okay, because even if they're doing one thing a month, to become more compliant and become like one step closer, that's doing something. And it's better than nothing, right? If you can't get GMP, in the next 6 months, then maybe it takes a year or two. That's okay, as long as you're working towards it. And it shows that your company is actually, caring, rather than ignoring the issue. Because if you ignore it and then you have 3 months to get GMP certification, it's not going to happen. The
That's a
timeline to get GMP is much longer than most people think. And so, it's really hard. Even working with like the New York government, right? Talking to them, they're like, oh, well, they need to get it a month after they get their license. And I'm like, that is not going to happen for anybody. Not in a million years could
right.
anybody do that. So it takes at least 6 months, at least. Sometimes it takes longer. So it's really hard, on companies to be able to do that overnight. So, like I said, working towards it slowly is sometimes the best way to do it.
Right. That's a great thought. And it is very true. There's a lot of financial pressure in the industry right now, between 280E and not being able to actually deduct normal business expenses with that issue. There's also the fact that some of these states just have wacky taxes, and with
Mhm.
the amount of taxes that they're charging, it makes it almost impossible for them to compete on an acceptable margin. And then they have this whole tax problem. So, to me, it's like the lack of government moving on these things is actually making the industry less safe,
Yeah.
because these poor companies, they don't have the additional funds, the discretionary funds to spend in this direction. But I love what you said about, you can basically set to the budget. You can work with companies so they can start small and expand the timeline. So it's not like they're not doing anything. They have time to sort of get that out, and it can sort of work with their budget. That's
Mhm.
a great approach.
Well, and we really pride ourselves. We love the industry, right? We're doing this because we have a lot of passion for the industry itself, and we want these products to be safe for everyone. Like
Yes.
we're all consumers. We're all, we want these products to be safe. We want the industry to thrive. And so we work with like really huge companies, and we also work with little bitty companies. There are literally like 2 people in the whole company.
Wow.
Yeah, we work on like on a sliding scale, kind of, however many hours per month you can do. And then we just start you in that direction. And then when your budget changes, or, if it doesn't, it just takes a little longer. And then at least when the regulators start coming in, you have a card and say, hey, we're doing this, we've got this going. These are the plans we just put in place. We're working towards it. And that looks a lot better for your company than like, oh, we don't have anything and we don't even know what you're talking about, which is sometimes the case. So yeah, we're really here to support everyone. And we really want everyone to do well. I mean, my biggest fear is that the FDA comes out with regulations tomorrow, says you have to be compliant overnight, and then more than half the industry goes out of business.
That would be very sad.
Yeah, it would be detrimental, and it would be terrible for consumers, right?
Yes.
There are people that need these cannabinoids for medical purposes, for sleep purposes, like all of these things that people use these cannabinoids for. If they lose, their brand that they've been using for, the past few years, that's going to be terrible. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, the
Yeah.
goal is to get into as many places as possible so that, that when this happens, not everybody's gone. So,
Well, when Canada went federal, they have something called good production regulations, right? Which I guess is sort of their regulated version of what eGMP or GMP would actually stand for. So, what can we actually? Is there anything to learn in that direction? Is there like how do we sort of play collaboratively with our own regulatory body? I know there's groups like CANRA, the Cannabis Regulators Association. What would your, sort of suggestion be of how we can proactively, as an industry, start sort of steering? I think GMP is a great place to start because it's an existing amazing framework. But what are your
mhm.
thoughts in that regard?
Yeah. So, I'm actually on the ASTM group, the D37. I'm actually the vice chair of the GMP standards subcommittee there. So we at ASTM, and I don't know if everybody knows what ASTM is, but it's essentially a standardization group that, they write standards for cement companies and for aerospace and for, they've been around forever and ever. And they are writing cannabis standards right now that the government is looking at, right? Because a lot of times they just say, oh, ASTM has already written this. Why don't we just take this regulatory framework and put it into our government, right? And they do it all the time. We're kind of hoping that happens with cannabis. We're not sure, but it is essentially GMP. If you are following those different CFRs, if you are getting GMP certification from an accredited third party, you're going to fall into that framework. Food safety and quality assurance is kind of the same across the board. It's just that specific cannabis regulations include those specific cannabis like issues or processes, right? There's no winterization, there's no CO2 extraction in any other industry. So it's, they're just molding it, taking already existing regulations and molding it to work for this industry.
Oh, don't say mold in the cannabis industry. That's not good.
Right.
Right. Or is it fungicide?
Right. But yeah, it's interesting because there's already a lot of groups that are working on that. I'm also part of a lot of like committees for individual state regulations, which, anybody can be a part of. It's not, you just sign up and show up and do the work. But it's all volunteer work and it takes a lot of time and that kind of thing. Thankfully, I can do that, but not everybody can. But yeah, just being involved and listening and putting in when people are asking for opinions, right? public comment, right? Read the regulations and write something and be involved in that process. That's really how people can kind of change the way that things are written. And if you're not commenting, then they don't even know that there's an issue, right? But yeah, I mean, being proactive in your own company is, hey, get GMP certification if you can, and you'll probably be okay and make it through this, wild ride that we're on. But when it comes to changing the actual regulations, I mean, anybody can join ASTM as well, right? Anybody can
Right.
be involved in these standardization groups and writing these regulations. You just have to volunteer and do it.
Yeah, so I hear your advice is, I'm going to say it different. Don't bury your head in the sand, right? The game is changing, and players in the industry are going to have to play different. So the question is whether you want to wait to be told what to do, or whether you want to be part of that change, right? And I'm really I'm encouraged by the fact that you can help smaller companies. I mean, that is a great message. That even if it's a small company, it doesn't mean that you can't afford these things. And I think that's really important. Now, I'm also encouraged by the work you're doing. Thank you on behalf of the industry for the volunteer work that I know you put a lot of time into ASTM and some of these state organizations. That's critical because the industry will advance through smart people, people that have a passion, but also understand. And it's not just, the compliance folks, but it's also the manufacturers. Because I've met some amazing growers and amazing people that work in these organizations, even the ones with the lab coats, the biochemists that, that are putting things together, and they all have a voice. And I think that's what you're saying, right? You all have a voice, get involved and don't wait. Right. So ASTM is one. So you can join ASTM and be part of one of their, I guess if you belong, can you get yourself on a specific work group or?
Yeah. So there's like a whole bunch of work groups. So like labeling and packaging, there's like 20 different work groups, and we all need volunteers for it, so the more the merrier, and the more voices from different areas of the industry, the better, because if you just have a bunch of growers in the room and that's it, then that's only one perspective of what we're doing, right? So we need, manufacturers, we need biochemists, we need, packaging experts, we need all of these different people to put their heads together to make the best set of regulations that we can.
And I also think we need technology people in the room because
yes.
there's when you and I had a great conversation about different technologies that will actually reduce the cost of compliance. And to me, whenever we see compliance in any regulated industry, especially one like this, where we know the pendulum's going to swing, we're not going to see less regulations. We're going to see more. So in addition to investing in these processes, embedding and ingraining these processes into a technology that's going to help you follow them, audit them, create corrective actions when there is an issue and a problem, I think is absolutely critical. Because in order to comply, instead of having an entire army of people making sure you're doing the right things, the way I see it, it's a combination of people, process, and technology, working together. So what are some of your thoughts about how technology can assist in the GMP management process and preparation process?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't realize how much of a heavy lift GMP is on the documentation standpoint. I mean, there's 40 something, 43-ish, depending on the facility, of SOPs that need to be written specifically to GMP, which, is a huge part of the heavy lifting that my company does, right? We essentially write SOPs and train staff. Like that's what we do. But on top of that is keeping track and trace. And when I say track and trace, I don't mean metric. I don't mean just that only tracks BioTrack, all of that. That's just THC, right? That's for regulators to know that there isn't THC disappearing in the supply chain. So it doesn't do much for GMP, unfortunately. What GMP requires is track and trace every single ingredient from beginning to end,
All of
and
it.
then also where it went. So that if something does happen, you can easily find which batch numbers need to be recalled, or, hopefully if GMP is done right, it won't even leave the facility if you find something, you find things wrong with it before it leaves, and then you don't have to go through a recall. But yeah, I mean, it's their technology. There's a lot of softwares. We work with several that do this kind of GMP track and trace. We have a couple that are cannabis specific, so they have all the right, processes that are included. And yeah, it's really nice to be able to have an employee be able to log in, click on something, update something, say that something happened, and there's a timestamp on it of when it happened. And that's amazing. And it does actually help the companies stay compliant, because there's something that is triggering them to record that.
Right.
Whereas we have some smaller companies that, they're like, no, we're just going to do it in an Excel spreadsheet, which is fine if they have a manager checking off on it every single day. But it is a lot more work that way. It's more work. It's less money up front and way more work on the back end. So it depends on the company. Every company is different. Some companies, they want to do the Excel spreadsheet and that's what they're comfortable with. And then we have others that are like, no, just let us have a software. Let's figure it out. But like I said, GMP has existed for over 100 years, and
It's nothing new.
it is nothing new. You are perfectly capable of doing this and implementing this in your facilities. I know it, when you look at the big picture, it seems like so much work and it's daunting. But our job is to chip it up into little bitty pieces so that the iceberg doesn't envelop you. We just work on it in little phases, and then the next thing you know, we're like, oh, well, your audit is next month, and we have everything done. So it's
you're awfully calming about it as well. So I can see you're like the GMP psychologist for these folks that are like really scared and worried. What's going to happen to my business? What's going to happen next? And I mean that sincerely, because you've made it affordable. You're breaking down the steps in a way that also doesn't make it look intimidating, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's important.
Each company is different. We do the first evaluation of the facility to make sure nothing physical needs to be changed, because obviously that's going to be an expensive thing if plumbing has to be changed and the ceiling has to be changed and the flooring has to be changed. But I think people are really surprised when we're like, hey, we have a fix for this. We can figure this out on a budget and, get you through it. Once we do that, then we evaluate what they have SOP wise. Most people don't have any GMP SOPs in place, so we just kind of start from scratch. And every month we get a few done. We do a little staff training, and then every month we get through it. We've got it down to a science at this point. We've got a really great program in place that makes sense, and we can get people through it pretty quickly. But it is really overwhelming at first, because people are not used to it. There's a lot of documentation, a lot of logs, making sure your staff is all on board. If the owner is not into GMP or doesn't want it, then it's not going to happen, right? It has to start from top down. And it has to be, the whole company has to be on board. And
well,
so
I'm not sure that companies are going to be in business when the new operating environment happens if they're not looking at these things, because I think it's heading in that direction. And I think that's really the message here is you got to start to embrace it. You can bite it off little bits at a time from an expense and a resource perspective. It's all doable. It's not like something brand new. It's been around a long time. And there's experts, and you're one of the foremost groups out there that are really helping cannabis companies out there, the experts that can help you walk through that. And I think there's a lot of people that tune into Qredible that are consumers, and they're novices that don't understand the industry. Of course, we have our B2B audience, but we also have our B2C audience that it's important for them to hear this industry is legitimate. and it's going to continue to be legitimate. And there's great players out there, and we just need to make sure that they're trusted and they're credible. So, so this has been an important topic. Joy, what did we miss? Did we miss anything? We covered a lot.
That's great. You guys covered a lot of ground. I think there's some good, like you said, I think the reassurance about this is doable and it's not going to be a gulp the elephant situation, that Allay Consulting and similar can come in and kind of, break it into those pieces. So let's just kind of, as we wrap here, Kim, let us know, how can people engage with Allay? What's the best way to get in touch with you all? If anybody's watching this and saying, gosh, I don't know where to start. Sounds like starting with you is a good option. So
yeah. Well, and we can help out with anything, right? So that's the good thing about being in the industry as long as we have, since like 2014, is we have a guy for everything. So sometimes people reach out about like really random things, and we're like, oh, we can send you to someone else that can help you out. We work with a lot of different consultants. So so we, if you want to reach out and just want some more information or want to chat, you can always go to our website, www.allay consulting.com. And there's just a contact us form on there. That's probably the best way to get a hold of us. And then we're going to be at MJ Biz. So we actually got nominated for an MJ award for the best or the consulting firm of the year, which that's awesome. Such an amazing, I was like so shocked. So that it's really great to be nominated, and I love, the MJs and all that. So we're going to be at MJ Biz. So, I'll be around. I'm actually speaking at MJ Biz, on the 30th, I believe. Yeah, the 30th at 10:45 on main stage. So I will be there if anybody wants to stop by.
Awesome. Well, congratulations for your nomination. And you're also humble. I know why you were nominated, but I hope you win. I hope it's a good thing.
Awesome. So. All right. Well, thanks so much again for being here. I just want to make sure we give a little quick shout out. We've got on December 14th coming up a large registration only webinar coming from Armanino, which is one of the largest accounting firms that has an outstanding and mature cannabis vertical. So that's going to be with Mike Gorel, our great colleague. And we have upcoming guests. So look on our events page to make sure you kind of see who's going to be on our Qredible live broadcast. We're fully booked up through mid-January already. So excited at the response, and just such a pleasure, Kim. Thanks for being here. We appreciate your perspective very much.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kim. Thank you for having me. You guys are great.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Take care.